Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council virtual study session for January 11th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order, ask everybody to either mute or turn off your cell phones or other electronic devices. And if you remember, mute your microphone when you're not speaking to improve the sound quality of the meeting. Rob, can you do a roll call for attendance, please?
Certainly. Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Trustee Dahlman?
Here.
Trustee Kripe?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn?
Here.
Trustee Mancini?
Here.
President Rintz?
Here?
I'll check for Trustee Swerk. I don't see him yet.
No.
Okay.
He'll be along. He said he was going to be here. So, all right, public comment. This is the time of the evening where anybody from the public can address Village Council on any item not on the agenda. So fundamentally, if you're here for Streetscape, we'll hear from you later. If you're here for anything else, hi John, we can hear from you now. Kristen, do we have any written public comment?
President Rintz, there were no written public comments submitted in advance of the meeting, nor are there any members of the public in attendance at Village Hall. We do have members of the public in attendance at the Zoom. So at this time, if anyone in the Zoom call would like to comment on something other than Streetscape, please raise your hand using the Zoom platform. President Rintz, there's no hands raised.
Okay, then we'll move along. Item 3 is Streetscape Phase 4 final design presentation. Tonight, representatives from TESCA and the Director of Engineering, Jim Bernal, are here to present the final design for the Phase 4 Streetscape project. Staff has been negotiating a contract with ALAM Concrete that will be presented to the Village Council for review and approval at the February 1st regular meeting. So with that said, I'll turn it over to whomever is going to lead the charge here and we'll forge ahead. I think, Jim, are you going to be?
Yeah, I'll get us started.
Okay, great. Good evening.
Great. Thank you, President Rintz, and good evening, everyone. To get started, just a quick, brief recap of some of the milestones to date on how we got here. As you may recall, on August 17th of last year, staff presented the preliminary design concepts for the proposed Phase 4 Streetscape program. The Village Council at that meeting concurred with the scope of the project and directed staff to proceed with securing proposals for the design services. On September 9th, the Village Council approved the professional design services contract with Ciorba Group and Tesca Associates. These are the two firms that have helped us with the first 3 phases to date. And at which time they began developing the design that you will see tonight. So based on the success of phases 2 and 3 and our lessons learned, it's our desire once again to commence construction as soon as March, weather dependent, of course. By beginning early, the work should be substantially completed by the end of June and allow for people to enjoy it. This has been a lesson that we've learned, that getting the work done and letting people enjoy it sooner is better. So this evening, Jill Troiani from Tesca Associates will be presenting the final Phase 4 Streetscape design. At the conclusion of the design presentation, we will discuss the budget and some of the preliminary costs that we have to date. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jill, who will walk you through the final design. Jill?
Good evening. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, my name is Jillian Troiani. I'm a landscape architect with Tesca Associates, and I've been working closely with Jody and staff on all the phases of the streetscape design. So tonight I will walk you through the design plans for the Phase 4 Streetscape, and I understand that you've all received materials in your packets, and we look forward to hearing your comments and questions after the presentation. So here are some images from previous streetscape phases on Chestnut Street and Lincoln Avenue. And it's been really fun to watch these places come to life and see all the people sitting outside and enjoying this space. And here we have the existing conditions of the Phase 4 streetscape area. We have cracked pavements, non-code compliant curb ramps, empty tree pits, and trees that are in poor condition. We also have utility work planned in the Moffett Mall area and are taking this opportunity to work with the Garden Club to develop a landscape plan that meets their needs. And these are the Phase 4 streetscape areas. They include Spruce Street west to Birch, Elm Street west to Birch, Chestnut Street from Elm to Oak, Oak Street from Chestnut to the Village Hall parking lot, Moffett Mall, and also the Village Hall parking lot. This project also includes water main construction and electrical transformer relocation to move those utilities out of the Moffett Mall area. Here we have an enlargement of the water main construction and electrical transformer location. The new water main is shown in blue dashed line, and here you can see where it connects to the existing water main at the white dots. The electrical transformer relocation is at the South Post Office parking lot and also at Village Hall parking lot. Here's a breakdown of the tree preservation and replacements. So overall, we are protecting 29 trees, removing 7 that are currently in poor condition, and adding 15 new trees for a total of 44 trees. So essentially, we're increasing the tree coverage in the Phase 4 streetscape by 50%. And here are some images of furnishings that will be in the Phase 4 streetscape, and these match existing, previous phases, and they're highlighted here. We have the vehicular light poles at the intersections, pedestrian light poles between intersections, planter pots, benches, lighted bollers, and tree grates. The paving will match the rest of downtown and includes clay brick pavers and broom finished concrete sidewalks. And here are the trees that are proposed for this area. These have been coordinated with the village forester and are the same species that were installed in the Lincoln Avenue streetscape. Here are the understory plantings that are proposed for the in-ground planter at Oak Street and Chestnut Bump Out, the Moffett Mall area, and the Village Hall parking lot. These have been coordinated with both the forester and the Garden Club. So next, I'll walk you through each of the plan enlargements, but I'll begin by saying we understand the streetscape is disruptive to businesses. So during construction, the eastern portions of the USPS parking lot will be reallocated for businesses. And this will be further discussed during the open house. We also understand that maintaining business access is important throughout, and sidewalk installations will be coordinated with business operations to provide access throughout the construction. So in terms of the design at Chestnut Street and Oak Street, we are proposing new sidewalks, curbs, and roadway, new pedestrian lighting, 10 new tree plantings with structural soil and tree grates, a bump out at the corner of Oak and Chestnut with an in-ground planter, and a larger 5-inch caliper maple tree like what was planted in the previous streetscape at Lincoln and Elm. And also bench seating and planter pots are along the perimeter to create enclosure. Because of the utility work in this area, we have the opportunity to restore and reset the brick paving in Moffett Mall and add brick paver crosswalks at Chestnut Street and leading to the entrance of Village Hall. The village is also partnering with the Garden Club to install new low-growing shrubs and ground cover plants to visually open up the space while leaving room for the Garden Club to program perennials and annual plantings at a later date. Along the brick walkway up to the Village Hall entrance are new benches for seating, planter pots, and a couple of lighted bollards. So on Elm Street, this is really just an extension of the streetscape work that's previously been done and just continuing it onto Birch Street. So here we have 2 new tree plantings with structural soil and tree grates, 2 new pedestrian lights, new sidewalks, and clay brick paver accents at the corners. And then Spruce Street, similar situation. It's extending the previous streetscape work to Birch Street. And here we're mainly installing new pedestrian lighting, new sidewalks, and restoring the long parkways. And finally, we have the Village Hall parking lot. The surface will be repaved with concrete and permeable pavers at the center to help with drainage and filter the stormwater. Trees will be preserved, and trees that are in poor condition will be replaced with new plantings. The existing evergreen shrubs will be replaced with a combination of deciduous shrubs, grasses, and perennials, with a 3-foot strip of grass along the sidewalks to prevent the mulch from spilling out into the sidewalk, so to keep it clean. At the corner, there's an existing statue, and here we're only proposing to replace the plantings around it with upright evergreens behind the statue, and then in front of it, grasses and perennials. Tesca has worked with C. Orba and staff to develop a cost analysis for the proposed streetscape plan. The unit costs reflect what we've been seeing in other streetscape projects in the North Shore, like Lake Bluff. And at this time, I will turn it back over to Jim to discuss the budget summary.
Thank you, Jill. Before we get started on the budget slide that you see in front of you, are there any questions about the proposed design or scope of the project that you'd like to ask Jill at this time?
Actually, Jim, if I might ask Jill, the cooperation with the garden club, is there someone on the call here? I mean, we've worked with them on Dwyer Park with the butterfly garden and so on.
Different club, Bob.
That's a different club. That's a woman. What is that, Chris?
That's the Garden Guild.
Garden
Butterfly.
Guild.
Yeah, no, they're at the Butterfly Garden. And the Garden Club has always been the advocacy group.
Yeah, the main one.
For Moffett Mall.
The public space ones.
Yeah.
Are they all in on this? I mean, what?
Yes,
Yeah.
we've had a few meetings with them and also David. So yeah, everyone is on board.
Okay, Chris, who's the person that spearheads that organization?
Rob, you're gonna have to help me out with this.
Jim and Jill, David Schoen had been coordinating the lead on this one.
Correct.
Do you recall the name? If not, we'll have to follow up.
Yes. I hope I have it right here in front of me.
It's the same question I had, Bob.
Yeah, okay.
To answer your question, Trustee Dearborn, yes. So David Schoen and Jody had met the gardening club at the site and talked about a preliminary concept of what they'd like to see involved with that. And they discussed the plantings and the coordinating. So the design that you'll see as part of the final contract is the coordination between that effort. Wendy Jury is the lady that we've been coordinating with.
Wendy Jury, okay. Because I know that, and Chris, you'll probably know this, and Rob, you'll know this, that our friend Linda Walsh was very involved in Moffett Mall way back when. And I assume that was the same organization, perhaps, that was involved with this. So, it's great to see the partnership, and hopefully they're truly fully committed to this.
Yeah, it sounded like from what I picked up from conversations with David and Rob correct me if I'm wrong, they're looking at kind of cleaning up a lot of the shrubbery. I mean, it's 20, 25 years old now, kind of bringing things up to a little bit more modern perspective on what plantings are used in public areas. that kind of right, Rob?
That's correct. I think also opening up some areas that have kind of grown in to be more enclosed. So it'd be, sight lines are better. People can walk it a little bit easier than it is now. But it's a refresh. It's not a complete redo.
So
The
Rob,
basic
Boehammer,
fundamentals of it are going to be there. Yeah, Bob.
so who's the driving force on that landscape? Is it the Garden Guild or is it the village?
It was the garden club.
Garden Club.
It was a garden club because we had presented, if I recall, kind of a slight refresh, and they had actually asked for more changes, and we were willing to work that out. And that's what you see before us tonight. If you like more details on it, we can certainly follow up on the exact planting plan. But I can tell you at this point, based upon what I've been informed by the team, is that we're in agreement on how to proceed with the garden club.
Okay, that I think that's the key. And
their request actually increased the budget beyond what we thought, but based on their suggestion, we thought it was worthwhile to do it.
okay. Okay, just so they're fully involved and all in on this project.
I think we reached out to them first, Bob, to make sure that we wouldn't end up with them coming to a meeting like this saying, how come you didn't talk to us? So
Right, exactly,
Right.
Chris. Thank you.
I
Okay,
think we're covering our bases, though. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I had one question, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim.
Yeah, no, I'll lower this hand thing once I figure out how to do that. When we originally talked about this a couple months back and it was proposed, wasn't there talk of doing the landscaping around the parking lot at Birch and Spruce? Or is that not part of this?
That's correct. We are planning on redoing the landscaping around the
Okay,
parking lots area. It's just not part of the streetscape project. We do
yes.
have the design that's going to move forward with it, but it's a separate contract.
cool.
I said a couple things. One is, I'm working with the garden club. The only thing I've seen from that people weren't thrilled about from a design standpoint, fairly consistently with the big white planters. And I've heard that from garden club members. Did we consult with them on those as well, or was that just our own hardscape decision?
That is actually based on the coordination with the village forester. And there was an initial concept that was put together as it related to the hanging baskets. So everything coordinated sequentially. The garden group has not been involved with that from when we started as part of Streetscape. It was part of the original phase 1, phase 2 Streetscape design.
Okay.
So a better answer is, Rob, a lot of people weren't happy with some of the stuff that was planted. Rob had a conversation with Christy Weber, explained to him that wasn't what the constituency groups were looking for, and those plantings will be modified going forward so that they're a little bit more consistent across town.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's was the physical, and that I some of it's noise, but that's the only thing I've heard that's pretty consistent, which was too many ballards and they weren't in love with the planters. Otherwise, it's been really positive. But
Yeah,
I know that as a consistent thing, which is those big white planters and how they're looking and how they're going to fare over the years.
Yep.
The other thought I had was on the trees. The forester picked the trees. I assume, like I saw the ginkgo. I assume that's not the ginkgo that I remember. It's a ginkgo that doesn't drop crap. Oh,
That's correct.
Okay,
Jill,
thank you.
Jill, do you want to confirm that, please?
Confirmed, yes.
okay.
It is not the one that will leave stuff all over the road and sidewalk.
And stink up the downtown.
Correct,
Thank
yeah.
you. I have to ask that question. But the rest of the trees, I assume they were just picked from a standpoint of things that are local that we wanted. How are they picked by the forester? Do you know? If we're putting a lot more trees in.
Yeah, they're trees that do well in streetscapes that can tolerate salt and tolerate, just being in a more urban traffic environment. And Yeah, and these have gone in the previous streetscape, so
Okay.
they've done well.
I just see a lot of different varieties, and I just want to make sure in 10 years they don't look either huge or not uniform, that they actually doesn't look like a hodgepodge of the Botanic Gardens. It would be something that actually looks like it's fits together in a street 10 years down the road.
Right.
Right, that you agree, or right that you think that's the case?
Yes, yes, that is the case, and I
Okay.
agree.
All right, thank you. And the last question I have is bump outs. Could you just explain that one bump out, how it's going to work again? Because I've heard on a parking situation, people rolling over the bump outs, and that's people trying to back into them. That is the only other thing I've heard that is proved difficult.
Yeah, so if you can see my screen still,
Yep.
there's just this one parking spot near the bump out. And then the engineers have made sure that the turning radius for deliveries and whatnot to this area are still doable. So there's really not much parking that will be in this area, except right here.
And we're gaining or losing how many parking spaces with this?
None. We actually added spaces during the first phase, Rob. So
Well, that's why I was wondering. I didn't know if we were gaining. I knew we were trying to at least go neutral or gain. So I was wondering if that's the same case.
No, I mean, all the numbers that we projected and promised during the first phase are still valid today. So.
Okay. Good. Great.
And Trustee Epitoff, the curbs that are on here, barrier curbs.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I saw Trustee Swerk raising his hand.
Oh, sorry. I was just Trustee Epitoff, I just want to let you know, these are the barrier curbs. They're not the super high back curbs where you would have to worry about backing in and hitting your bumper against them. So they're the more traditional type ones.
Okay, great.
John.
Great. As long as you're on this picture, I know you're trying to get through the budget part of it, but as long as you're on this slide, when I look at the crosswalks that go from Moffett Mall to the post office, the two that are on diagonals, possibly consider making those straight and change your parking stalls a little bit, or can we do a wider crosswalk at the bump out of Moffett Mall?
In the middle.
And maybe the whole mall width across the road, and really make it highlighted, because wherever it gets developed across the street later, that might be a nice path to get to Moffett Mall. Otherwise, we're just kind of ignoring Moffett Mall. Any thoughts or ideas?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, we did talk about it with the engineers straightening those crosswalks. That will end up losing 2 parking spots.
Why would we lose? Well, okay, how about
on the north side, or on the west side where it connects, there's 2 parking spots that would be lost.
we might lose one, because when you move that, let's say the left crosswalk to the left, it's just going to put the crosswalk on the other side of the parking stall.
There's also buffer, there's buffer components in between the parking spots. So it's 2 parallel spots and then a buffer. It's usually about 4 to 5 feet wide. It's those yellow hatched areas. So when we started moving them around, we wound up losing a couple parking spaces. By connecting it at an angle, it kept where the crosswalks currently go now to that location. That's why we tied them back in, to keep uniform.
Okay.
And when, Jill, if you could go to the other slide of the Moffett Mall one.
Yes. Oop.
There you go. You can see how they're all angled. It was part of a design as well. So on the
Right,
east
I can
side-
see the ones going to the
Yeah,
to the Village Hall.
Yep.
But go back to the other slide again.
Yep.
Are those parking stalls on this slide not showing the gaps between them? Because they all look like the same length on this slide.
yeah. So where they're crossing now would hit those buffer areas. So when you go from
Right, but if
the
you
east
see
side of
that
Chestnut,
buffer area to the left, doesn't the spot just move? Oh, I see. But then you
No.
have 4 spaces with no buffer.
correct, that's correct.
Okay, and what about just going straight up Moffett Mall across the street? And you have a 15-foot wide crosswalk there
Yeah,
of pavers.
that's kind of interesting.
Because otherwise, you're not really gearing anybody to go into Moffett Mall.
Yeah, it just kind of ends there.
I think
Jim,
what we originally did was we looked at the crosswalks across Chestnut Street, which is just scheduled to be resurfaced. We could definitely take a look at the layout for if we did a striped crossing across the area. I think the thought was not to extend a brick paver type crossing path just yet, based on future work that could potentially take place over there.
Okay, then I totally agree then. I'm okay with that. Just somewhere down the road, when that does get redeveloped, we should look at some paved crosswalk at that area. Okay,
Sure.
as long as
Yeah.
it just stripes for now, I'm okay with that.
John, I agree, because the whole thing needs to connect at some point. I mean, maybe now isn't the time, but I would sure like to see a sketch that contemplates that, because we're
Yeah, if
doing-
it's just stripes going across now, thinking future something's gonna happen, I'm okay with that. But keep
Okay.
that in mind in the future,
Okay,
okay? That's the only question I have.
okay. Oh, there's David. Hi, David. Jim, I think you were heading towards the budget now, right?
I was heading towards the budget. Okay, so in addition, one other item that I would note, and was noted in your agenda packet, the village will once again be hosting an open house meeting with the local businesses and the affected residents prior to the commencement of construction. As in the previous events, items discussed will include the overall construction schedule, sequencing of activities, maintaining and providing ample parking near businesses during the construction, as Jill noted, as well as maintaining the most important part, which is access to the businesses during construction. So we'll again walk through that. Those meetings have been very successful. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic last year, the meeting was held virtually, but was still well represented. As additional details on the dates and times are solidified, this, of course, we'll share this with the public. So with that, next we'll discuss briefly the proposed budget and the preliminary cost for this year's program. This is the slide you see in front of you now. The recently approved 2022 budget includes a total of $3,065,530 for the full scope of the Phase 4 project that you saw tonight. This budget was developed originally using the preliminary cost estimates developed by the village's consultants and staff based on anticipated trends in the markets that we were seeing towards the end of 2021. The village was very fortunate in the past two construction phases that we were able to take advantage of construction pricing that was held by the contractor from the competitively bid contract back in 2019. Staff did speak with the contractor about holding these prices for one more year. However, due to the price increases being seen in the current market for labor and materials, the contractor just wasn't unable to do that, to hold those same prices. So to ensure that the construction can commence in March and to allow for the purchase of critical long lead time items, staff's been working with the contractor to develop the preliminary cost based on today's market. The budget summary slide before you are those costs based on the 95% design plans to date, and they also include a 10% general contingency in case there was something when we got to final plans that we thought we might have missed. I would note that some of the areas with the biggest increase in pricing were metal types of products, such as ductile iron, water main, copper wiring with the electrical component. Slight modest increases are also being seen in some of the hardscape items, such as the metal benches and the trash and recycling containers that we utilized. The price was modest, but we don't have too many of those. So based on the quality of the contractor's work, their overall experience from the past projects, of course, the village's desire to begin construction in March and to avoid those unknown volatilities in the current marketplace, staff is recommending that the council consider allowing staff to continue negotiating with the contractor from the previous ones, which was A-Lamp Concrete Contractors, on ending with more favorable construction costs. Of course, we will be returning to the council on February 1st to present the final contract for your consideration. And at that time, we can get into more specific details as it relates to those pay items. So the items that you see here are the major items that were broken down. The roadway cost, again, the sidewalk and paver components. Again, these include the gray work and the lighting extensions that you saw on Spruce and Elm Street. The streetscape furnishings, which again was a smaller price from previous. And then the streetscape plantings, the structural soils and the plantings that we'll be doing at Moffett Mall was a large number for that. Of course, there's the general things, mobilization that includes incidental costs and things like that. And again, the general contingency, which we're carrying at 10%, which equates to about $252,000. Now, we're confident that when we get closer to the final numbers, that number will obviously go away as we have 100% final plans. So based on the approved budget that we had and the preliminary, even the preliminary costs with the contingency, we're below that budgeted amount. So I think we're in good shape, but we want to continue those discussions with the contractor as we finalize everything. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have for us.
Jim, clarify this for me. The numbers that you're showing us here, are these engineers' estimates, or are these A-LAMP in progress numbers, or?
They're a combination of, both. So these are numbers that
A-LAMP is weighed in on these.
that is correct.
Right.
Okay.
President Rentz, these are about 90 to 95% confirmed numbers from A-LAMP. Jim, is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Okay, and then what was our budget?
$3,065,000.
3065?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
And some change.
that's my only question. Rob?
Chris, can I ask a question?
Sure, jump in.
Yep. So Jim, first of all, great to see you here tonight, for
Thank you
sure.
very much. I'm happy to see all of you.
It's great that you're here.
Thank
We're waiving the bidding process for a $3 million project. Do you have any sort of qualitative or quantitative estimate of what, and there was language in the memo that was sent out about cost increases and inflation and so on, and we know that's going on.
Right.
But how can we get comfort with the $3 million number versus bidding out? I mean, and I understand that A-LAMP, they've done a great job. There's value and consistency here. I get that. But, what do you think in terms of $3 million if we bid it out? What would we be looking at?
So what we did was I took a look at the numbers from the 2019 bid, the prices that we've been carrying for the past 3 years. And I took the unit prices and kind of broke them down. And on average, what we're seeing is about a 14% increase of what you see here. So what that basically means is the pricing from 2019 till now has increased on average of by about 14%. Now, it's important to note that what's really driving the increase on this is the metal items. So the ductile iron water mains, the electrical copper, which make up a big component of that, those prices are on average up to 26 to 28%. We're seeing a big volatile increase in those. The actual roadway prices that we have, the streetscape roadway items, we're only increasing over the past 3 years by about a little less than 10%, about 9.5%. So that's below the average that you typically see, which is on average about a 5% increase is what you'll see across the board when in the marketplace. The sidewalk and the paver components only up about a little less than 2%, so that's great. And the plantings, even though we're doing a lot more plantings, the pricing that we saw in 2019 to now is only up about 7%. So really the big factor here is water main and electrical, and that's a big part of this project. And when you add them all together, the average is 14%, but in realistic terms, besides if you took the metal out, we're below 10%. So I think the pricing that we're seeing from A-Lamp that they're putting forth is competitive. It's within the range of acceptable. And as Jill noted, some of the similar types of streetscape projects that they've seen, the price increases are right where we're at. And that's just from 2021 to 2022. They're seeing 10% plus just in the 1 year. So I'm confident that the numbers we're getting from them are within market and within range that would be acceptable for the village.
So Bob, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was
gonna say,
follow
Rob,
up on you.
So bottom line, Jim, in your estimation, in your opinion here, based on your analysis, if we were to bid this out, that we would be looking at a price in excess of $3 million.
I would believe so. When we originally put the estimate together that we presented in August, we were in the range of about 3.185, if I remember. I apologize, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but about that at that time. The information we're getting on similar project is that those really conservative numbers that we originally presented are, if not consistent, but even more so. So I think by bidding this, we open ourselves up to the volatility that's out there. There's quite a bit of work and there's quite a large increase in these specific materials. So I think we run the risk of definitely being over the 3 million, if not the 3.1 million.
Well, you know, in terms of waiving the bidding process, that's a key statement. So thank you for that.
Sure.
So I guess I'm looking at if.
Hold on a sec, Rob.
Oh,
Tina had her hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it.
That's okay.
That's okay. I'll lower my hand now here. Sorry.
I should have raised it. Yeah.
Hold on one sec, Tina. Then Rob, then John. Go ahead.
Okay, got it. Okay. So Jim, thank you. A couple things just very quickly, because I'm new to this process, is that how did A-Lamp do coming in on budget, under budget, over budget for the previous phases?
So the previous phases, we were on phases 1, we were below budget. Phase 2, we were slightly above budget, but we had some utility conflicts and some water main issues that we had to deal with, which drove the price up. But above that change, they were right on target. The Streetscape project last year, which had a lot of different issues, especially with the water main, we were able to come in basically right on budget.
Okay.
So overall, we haven't had a lot of change orders.
And then my other question is factoring into the idea of waiving the bidding process for this, is that we've somewhat locked in A-Lamp into their schedule, because I've got to imagine, given the volume of infrastructure projects that are about to come out of the ground, that trade availability as well as material availability are a concern if we took the time to go through the bidding process, and that the prices would continue to increase. Is that part of the concern as well?
That's correct. As we went through the first 3 phases, they've also set up purchasing agreements for some of the items now. So if there's a high level of confidence that the village is willing to consider waiving the bidding process, they're willing to move at risk to start purchasing some of those long lead time items, such as water mains and valves and things like that. So this has been building. There's a confidence in working together over the past three phases.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
And they will do a much better job on public safety in this phase, isn't that right?
That is right, President Rentz.
Good. John, you had your hand up, right?
Sure. So I
Wait,
think.
I'm sorry. No, yet. Rob, you were next.
No. I give John, go for it. You go
All
first.
right.
Sorry.
So maybe to also help Tina and other new members. I know she talked about how did the other projects end up on the total budget, but keep in mind that when these were publicly bid originally, A-Lamp was lower than other bidders. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'm assuming that they were lower than the other bidders also. And with the current bidding situation that we're all in these days, you may not even get people interested in bidding the $3 million project. Or like, I think other, Tina may have mentioned, they're so busy, they may say, I can start in a year. So I think it's, well, and also when you look at going from 09, or sorry, from 19 to 22, to only have about a 15% increase is really amazing to begin with. I mean, that's almost like standard increases in a way, not to mention the price increases of materials. So as long as this waiving of the bidding is okay with Ben Schuster, that we're not getting ourselves into trouble, I'm totally okay with it.
Tina, one thing I don't think was really clear in this whole explanation too, is the unit prices that we negotiated with A-Lamp on phase 1, they held those prices through phase 2 and 3. So we got 3 years at the same
Yep.
number of 2019 before they came back and said, we can't do it anymore.
Yep, I got that.
Okay.
And, you know, given, I think what John has said, that we might have difficulty even getting people to be interested in bidding, I think is a real concern. Because we're certainly seeing that on the private side of things.
Wow.
So,
Jesus.
Rob, ready now?
No, now I'm kind of depressed. That 15% increases are, I get it. I see it happening around us. I guess that was my question, which was, if they had held prices, that we're looking at about a $400,000 bump to this overall project. If you're talking 10 or 15%, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And we do a lot of other stuff with A-Lamp. Is there other ways we, you know, I don't care where it comes from, what phase it is. If we do, it's the total we pay them. We do a lot with them. I assume this is factored in, and when they do all the other road work for us, can we sweep?
That's correct. And those are competitively bid projects. Our annual street rehabilitation program, which will be coming forth to you soon enough, that is competitively bid. The Birch Street MFT project that they had done for us as well last year was also competitively bid. There's a savings based on the scale of work that they're doing within town. They like the relationship with the village of Winnetka. And so if they're doing these larger projects, we're benefiting on multiple sides of having them in town doing the same work.
Okay, yeah, that's why I was trying to say, is that obviously you give them a lot of work, and that we're holding where we can find savings because of the general volume we do with them. We get it.
Yep. Okay, Jim, next.
That's all I had as far as for my presentation. Unless anybody has any other questions for us.
Kim?
I had one, Chris, I love that you hit the nail on the head right away. My biggest concern was the public safety. Last time, obviously, with Lincoln and Elm, there were several issues. There's a preschool around there. There's a community center. There's a lot of people walking. And I know of a couple incidents where there were some close calls of falling into the hole. So didn't know if there was some sort of strategy with them of putting up better blockades beyond just yellow tape.
Yes, we've,
Yes.
Jim, you want to talk about that? We've had staff discussions about how to have a more robust barrier between the excavated site and the pedestrian walkways. And Jim, you can add a little bit more to that.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So yeah, we've been talking with A-Lamp, and the numbers that you see in front of you here also include that additional robust component of adding more rigid types of barriers that are not so easily broke to prevent people from crossing over and getting into the construction site or vice versa. So we're looking at installing more rigid types of fence with concrete bases and posts that can really span the entire distance and keep a much cleaner separation between where the work activities are taking place and where the pedestrians are traversing along the front of the business areas through there, as well as setting up centralized places where people can safely cross. So people know they're coming to a cross instead of parking and then trying to figure out where they were going to cross.
Awesome. And one more question I have too, related to timing. I know March 15th, hopefully be done by the end of June, so people can enjoy it. But within that time frame, is there a priority set to certain areas? Do you guys have a plan for it? I know there's a couple restaurants that have really benefited from having outdoor seating during the pandemic, and I'm assuming they're hopeful to get as much of that warm weather time now. I don't know if you put priority to based on where businesses are and what their needs. I'm just curious about how you plan that.
Yeah, so we've had some preliminary conversations about the actual sequencing of how this would take place. The Spruce Street and the Elm Street improvements can actually just run solo. They're away directly in front of where those businesses are at. Those can start when weather breaks, where we can get in, get out quick, and be done. That's our intent. We've had a new restaurant off of Spruce Street. We want to have the least amount of impact to them. The restaurants along Chestnut Street have really been blossoming. So our intent is to try to get the water main on Chestnut and Oak done as quick as we can, and really sort of pull the construction into the Moffett Mall area, because we actually have a lot of electrical work. There will be a new water main through there, and the Village Hall parking lot will be reconstructed as well. So our intent is to try to get off those main thoroughfares and get kind of inward a little bit, so that we can not impact traffic and deliveries and things like that, and then focus on that inside part. Once we're really done with the water main work, the resurfacing of Chestnut and Oak can happen. We want to try to do the work sequentially, but we're going to try to expedite as quick as we can.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I guess at this point in time, we should open it up for any public comment.
So President Rintz, we do have Teresa who's raised her hand. Teresa, I'm going to allow you to talk and ask you to unmute.
Hello.
Welcome.
Right, thank you. Teresa Lucas, owner of Good Grapes, 821 Chestnut Court. So I actually have several questions, not that deep or anything like that. And I think one or two of them might be a little repetitive to the conversation that just ended. And I apologize for that. One of those pesky customers came in, so I had to turn down the volume, but hopefully that will be it. So on page 6, where it talks about the northeast corner plaza of Chestnut and Oak Street and the build out and potential things to happen there. I don't necessarily think this is a construction plan, but is there planning for what will happen in that build out to attract consumers?
Yes.
And when will that be public? I know you can't share it now, but when will that be public soon?
Well, Teresa, we're doing the entire streetscape, meaning the bump out, the sidewalk, the plantings, and all of that on Oak Street, to start to add that into the mix as part of our business district. So programmatically, we don't go inside the buildings and tell people what they should and shouldn't do, but it creates an environment where businesses would look at that as a more desirable location.
Okay, so okay. I'm not going to bring up the document on my thing, but I thought there was some language in there about where events or something could be held. I probably misread. Thank you.
Sure.
On page 7, the project construction schedule, what temperature roughly or range is that qualifies as soon as weather permits?
Jim?
So typically we can begin construction on water main as soon as we know that the ground is not frozen, there's not a major buildup of snow, and we can get materials readily, consistently. So we were able to start over on Lincoln Avenue. It was about mid-March when we kind of got started. We were fortunate, the weather was warm enough. So weather dependent, that's what that means. As soon as the weather permits us to be able to work out there safely and get reliable, consistent supplies, we will get out there as quick as we possibly can.
So is that 40 to 45 degrees?
It's really not based on the temperature. It's just based on the reliability of, are we above freezing? Typically, when you're above freezing, 32 degrees, we can still work in cold weather, but again, it's just about the reliability from the suppliers. They have to be able to give us materials and to make sure that we can move quickly and efficiently.
Okay, so it's more materials driven than temperature driven.
It's a combination of both.
Okay, thank you. And then there was in the second paragraph on page 7, and this I apologize for. I think this, Kim, you were just asking questions on this when I had someone in the store and wasn't fully focused. How long is is it expected to take for the work associated with the replacement of the existing water main on Chestnut Street and Court and Oak Street?
We haven't fully developed that schedule just yet. Teresa, when we get past this component, we'll start working with the contractor on the schedule. That'll be shared as part of more details with the open house. I just don't have that level of detail just yet.
Okay, so but here's the challenge I have with this. So, and I appreciate that answer, but I think the milestone schedule says February 1st, right? You're ready to go? And there's no date for the open house. And the whole open house, there's a lot that goes into it. And I think as Kim pointed out, it's not just the restaurants, it also includes me. And, I've worked out with Toko about who's going to do entertainment when, and, and it impacts like hiring, staffing, depending upon when you can do it. You have to give down payment. So I'm not trying to nail you to an exact date, but there are significant impacts to that. And, Chestnut Court in the summer thus far, we'll see with Pomeroy, but I'm still hopeful, both sides closed. It's the place to be in warm weather.
Well, Teresa, we have all of February to handle the logistics conversation with you and all of the affected businesses. And that February 1st was really just bringing all of the contractual and financial documentation to Village Council for a green light to start moving forward. Then in February, everybody has a chance to get together with you guys, meet, work through the scheduling issues, and and look at every single phase. During that open house conversation, there have been modifications to the original plan based on what we heard from our businesses. And this will work the same way, that, hopefully we'll get good participation, have a robust conversation with Jim and his staff, and then be able to publish a final schedule that we're all in agreement with and that you guys can kind of bet on at that point. And when Jim says the project will be done late June, we're talking about the little stuff too, the plantings and the light bulbs, and majority of the work should probably happen. What would you say, Jim? March, April, May would be the heavy stuff for the most part.
Yeah, I would anticipate if we get warm enough weather and we can get into and do that, the concrete component and the asphalt paving, I would definitely say probably there by the end of May, we should be looking substantially more complete. You'll start seeing the light fixtures that'll start going up. The plantings are dependent on weather. I think when we did Lincoln, we got pushed back just a little bit. We were out there mid-June on some of these, but some of the trees will get in as quickly as we can.
Thank you. There's no, I couldn't care less about the trees versus being able to close down Chestnut Court. So I think that's great. So I've written that down, and I do understand the scheduling aspect. I actually have quite extensive experience in that. And I guess it's interesting to me that the milestone schedules are there without that. So I'll wait for that. And I would also, just point out that based on the weather forecast, 60-degree weather is expected at the end of April. And I'm really hoping that Chestnut Court and this whole area takes a priority that supports Toko, 501 local, soon to be, I'm drawing a blank on the upcoming sushi place right around the corner. And I don't know if Bruno's new building will be done by then, probably not, but that, Chestnut Court's the place to be in the summer.
We all understand that, Teresa.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I look forward to the schedule. So, and on the same thing on page 7, second paragraph, and I want to make sure I understand the wording. So is the village parking lot construction going to be at the same time as Chestnut Court or after Chestnut Court and Street?
Jim?
That's part of the scheduling. I would anticipate the parking lot would probably be the concrete, because both are going to be placed in concrete. I would anticipate that the Chestnut Court would go first and that the parking lot would go last.
Great, excellent. Excellent, because it doesn't really, the parking lot impacts the village employees and a little bit of Lakeside, not much. And then in terms of the milestone schedule, and I get that they're milestone. So since the schedule isn't actually done, I guess I would ask, based on phase 3, is there reserve in the schedule for the dates you're giving if something goes wrong?
When we develop the schedule, yes. We will take into account weather interruptions, rain, potential change in forecast. We work with the contractor hand in hand as it relates to any delays that we encounter and how we make that time up.
Okay, great, thank you. So on page 8, community outreach. So accessibility, in my opinion, accessibility to businesses should be mandatory throughout the entire duration. What is or when will the plan be done for both implementation and duration if there's a repeat of the Lincoln Avenue type issues to ensure that the businesses are always accessible?
I'm sorry, you got muffled. You got muffled towards the end there.
Sorry, I don't know if that was me or my computer. Sorry, not sure. So on page 8, the community outreach. So businesses need to be accessible at all times.
Correct.
And that didn't happen on Lincoln Avenue. So behind, not going back, but will you guys proactively have something planned in case that happens in
Yes.
phase 4? So that
Absolutely.
we're not taking the time to develop something?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll repeat what I said at a different meeting that you weren't at. It doesn't need to be pretty. It needs to be functional and safe. It's just in my opinion. I don't know if anyone else wants pretty, but it just needs to be functional and safe. Kind of continuing along on that page, road closures are the death of a business. And if the sooner that gets out, candidly, based on the hours, I don't know that I'll be at the open house, but it impacts a lot. It impacts hiring staff if we're going to have whatever. I would hope that would be pushed out as quickly as possible and not something that's held back to the open house. And then my last comment on that section, and this might be something you'll communicate later, but I'm hopeful that there will be frequent proactive updates on the progress. And I want to go back to phase 1, but after the fact of discovering it and hearing it through the grapevine that we found a fuel tank, isn't settling. And so I know we all have lessons learned from everything we've done, but I think regular, proactive, and frequent updates would be greatly appreciated.
Jim?
Yes, we will be sure to provide weekly construction updates. Liz DeChant from Community Development, who I know Teresa, we worked very closely together, talking to the businesses regularly on a weekly basis, providing updates and answering any questions as it relates to specific work taking place right in front of each one of those businesses. Through the village website and through eWinnetka, we provide weekly updates on accomplishments for the week, what we've accomplished, what's coming up next week, as well as any specific leave behind notices for interruptions that we think would be large interruptions. Major milestone changes. We're switching from Chestnut Street to Chestnut Court. All those major things will be broadcast out through hand-delivered letters, as well as the webpage and face-to-face interactions.
So I'm happy to provide some feedback on that. So, and again, I don't want to go back to phase 1, but there isn't a person in West Elm that didn't know the fuel tank was found underground before it was days to face-to-face. And I appreciate—
We've done a lot better since then, Teresa.
Okay. So Chris, thank you. I agree with that. And I appreciate the face-to-face and everything like that, but a group email follow-up, at least then that what the official position is. So, and again, I appreciate the face-to-face, and I agree with 100% with Chris that it's a lot better. I just, when it's face-to-face, we're just playing phone tag. Did you hear yet? Who said what? Just food for input, thought for input. And if you don't want to do it, that's okay too. But group emails work really well.
I agree.
Thank you. Okay, and then I'm going to skip that because we already talked about it. And this is like a nit. But on page 16, and I know there's a lot of little things, it's more the ground lights in Moffett Mall. It's not that I care what they look like. I just wanted to kind of follow up on a prior village council meeting that there's going to be more to light up, Moffett Mall and the trees in that. And I thought, David, that you show, not to put you on the spot, but I thought you said that there was some of that. Is that still in the plan?
I don't believe David's on this meeting, but.
okay.
Yeah,
He is.
here, Jim.
Sorry.
Your question again, Teresa? I didn't quite understand it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I talk fast. Sorry about that. Remember at the last village council meeting that I went to, I asked about Moffett Mall, about how to enhance its brightness. And I asked about additional lighting to like spotlight the trees or something like that. And I had in my notes that that was in the plan. Is that accurate?
Well, the lighting will be upgraded and there'll be power available for seasonal lighting and special events and things like that. Yeah.
But the Sternbergs are being replaced, and
Right.
they'll have updated fixtures that have the same lighting that you see throughout the rest of the town.
Okay, so, but there's not additional lighting that's going to be in the ground to highlight whether that's the flowers or the trees? I must have misunderstood from the last meeting.
I don't think that was in the plan.
I'm not disagreeing, I'm just asking for clarification.
Yeah, there are not such lights. There hadn't been plans for such lights, so you must have misunderstood. We've talked about lighting the trees, as have been done in the past. We're putting in new Sternbergs, which will then have the winter holiday decorations on them, but there's not new spotlighting or landscape lighting being installed in Moffett Mall.
Okay, I guess I'll restate what I said at the last village council meeting. I find that disappointing since we're trying to highlight it as such a main gathering place and that you can't see it from Chestnut Street. And so I thought that there was going to be a little bit more to highlight that area to attract people to it as a main gathering place.
Jim, do you want to speak to the pedestrian lights that are on Chestnut between Elm and Oak that are not there now?
So that will be the, Teresa, as you've seen through the first two phases, there's the Sternberg pedestrian lights, which are right near all the four corners by Chestnut and Elm. And then of course, going down Elm Street and north up Chestnut, those will be extended all the way down from Elm Street to Oak. That'll be a continuation. And then along, of course, the north side of Oak Street. So there'll be that same similar spacing, which will enhance the lighting throughout there consistently with north of the intersection. In addition, as noted, the new Sternberg lights that'll be placed within Moffett Mall themselves. The other ones are the old sodium lights. These are the new LED lights. So that'll be enhanced through there. That'll actually help to brighten the area within the island area itself. And as David noted, we are adding additional electrical sources to enhance the holiday lighting within there, the decor, the trees, and of course the Sternbergs will have accessibility for garland and things like that. At the corners, specifically as you can see on this photo here, at the corner right by where you're off, or excuse me, where your business is at, there'll be a new Sternberg light there, which is kind of the entranceway into Chestnut Court, and then the same thing directly across as well. So the lighting in there will be much more robust than it is right now.
Okay,
And at a pedestrian scale too, which is probably the most important thing.
That's correct.
okay, so I'll trust that because, well, one is extension cords and power strips would have supported holiday lighting, but skipping that, if you were to stand at, and I'm going to take your word for it, Chestnut and Elm, and look down Chestnut Street, you wouldn't see any lights from Moffett Mall. I mean, it's pitch black. So what I believe you're saying is with the additional lighting that Moffett Mall, even though, if I understand the drawing correctly, the light posts within Moffett Mall aren't any closer to the street, but somehow that area is going to be visible without additional lighting in Moffett Mall, just upgraded lighting.
The enhanced LED lighting. So you'll have the pedestrian lighting directly at that corner of the north side of Chestnut Court, right in front of where Good Grapes is at, and then directly south on the other adjacent corner. And then you'll have the new smaller but decorative Sternberg lights that have the LED lighting component on, which are brighter than the current ones that are out there right now.
So thank you. So I understand that. And I will still state though, with the lighting in Moffett Mall pushed back, I just don't see, and I'll have to wait and see how that's going to work, how that's going to highlight Moffett Mall, because it'll light up Chestnut Street, but I don't see how it's going to bring Moffett Mall into visibility. So I'll wait to see how that works out. But Moffett Mall is the most beautiful, underutilized place in Winnetka, in my opinion, which is probably wrong.
Hey, Jillian, do you have any renderings or bird's eye view sort of things of that installation there? The projected installation?
No, we only have the plan drawings of this area.
Okay.
And so,
Teresa-
go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Teresa, I think we're talking about the same thing, is that the lighting is going to be greatly improved, and with those two light posts, one on your corner and one on Bruno's corner, it's going to look more like a gateway that's going to draw you in. And once you're on it, you will definitely experience Moffett Mall a lot differently than you currently do.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
On page 20, and this kind of jumps back to the, a little bit, but not really, not 100% overlap, to the crossing, the lines crossing Chestnut Street, the pedestrian walkway, walk here. So as someone who is on 2 and a third minor, uncomfortably close to getting hit by a vehicle, of people going down Chestnut Street and listening to screeching brakes as the kids come with their bikes, and the drivers just are not attentive to those lines. I'm wondering if there's a way in this phase, understanding there's other desires down the road, which I actually liked, the more entrance into Moffett Mall, to designate or to indicate that cars need to stop for pedestrians. And is that and I might be wrong on this, I was trying to think of, they did something where I live in the city to do that because of high volume. Is that the really wide white lines that run horizontal? Is that the state, I don't know, is that the state indicator to drivers that you have to stop to pedestrians? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, instead of just the 2 lines that says that's where the pedestrians should walk through?
I'm not familiar with any
painted
striping.
crosswalks like in Evanston.
Pardon me?
They have that in Evanston, like the big painted crosswalk blocks.
Yeah, yes.
You're talking about, instead of the singular striping, actually like,
Right.
what's the word? I'm like the Beatles cover where they've got
Yeah,
the
exactly.
big
It's like Abbey
ladder
Road.
across- Yeah.
Yeah.
They're both mean exactly the same. Some are enhanced. You typically see some of the more larger stripe components when they're near school areas. You'll see those more consistent with schools than within sort of residential. The singular striping that we have here right now is consistent with what's in the rest of the commercial district areas. I'm not saying we couldn't enhance it. It's possible to enhance it if we wanted
It's a paint
to.
job. It's a
Yeah,
paint job.
it's additional thermoplastic.
Let's not overestimate it. So
Sure.
here what I would tell you without exaggeration. So first I'm going to focus on me. I came so close to getting hit by a FedEx car that 2 people, a truck, jumped out because they assumed I got hit. And in the summer, when my door is open, listening to the screeching cars, and I know the kids aren't supposed to be in Moffett Mall, I'm not going on that topic, and they go across, there is no indicator to drivers that they are supposed to stop. And I think that there is going to be an accident, not that I want it, but like I live in Old Town, and so they put in this big plum market at the end. And so they put in those wide pavers on Wells Street, or those wide lines, and the cars stop to it. So it seems to me that they have more of a message, or maybe it's a flashing light. And I don't even think it's part of this because they could be done sooner, but I just think that something bad is going to happen there. I don't think people are paying attention, and I live in the city, so I'm comfortable saying it. it's a lot of young people moving out of the city and people who just got their driver's license. There's a
Teresa, you're
stereotype.
not the only person who's concerned about public safety in that corridor there. I've got some ideas, but this isn't the project to implement them in. I do agree that the striping needs to be a little bit more elaborate, but we really need to calm traffic down on Chestnut in general.
Okay, so I agree with that, but I'd already sent in a request and I thought since it was in here, it was an opportunity.
I think when we get the diagonal parking in, that'll slow people down quite a bit too.
Okay, and I'm gonna harp only because I have an experience with it. I think those wide stripes work better than the here's where you walk through, but I don't know, maybe they're not working in Evanston.
Yeah.
They work I'm telling you, the place where I cross, they work and cars stop. And it's actually not, Wells Street isn't that dissimilar to Chestnut, but okay. So I agree that that's kind of one-off and hopefully can be handled sooner.
Yeah. You know, we really got to
so-
get moving here, Teresa.
Okay, no, I know, but you invited input, so.
Yes, we did.
Okay. So my last is kind of more of a closing comment, and I'm always candid. I don't think that's appreciated very much, but I'm going to be candid again. I appreciate the presentation about how successful the prior phases were, but Lincoln Avenue is valid reason to have angst about what's going to be happening between the flooding, the gas leaking, the temporary lack of access to businesses. And consumers just stayed away from Lincoln Avenue because of the construction. And so my hope is that when the meeting with the businesses occurs, which was stated here as well, the last one, is that, and stated Linda DeChant was going to be doing that, is that she's coming to the meeting with her own ideas, as well as what was done in the prior phases that worked for those businesses. And most importantly, that we talk about how to keep consumers coming into West Elm during construction, not waiting till it's done and saying, okay, you guys haven't been here for 3 months, how do we get you back? And I think that's pivotal, is that it's ongoing, not when it's all done. And so I'm hopeful that that will happen, and that we'll see programs coming in for Chestnut and Elm Street, to attract residents and non-residents to West Elm. So thank you. That's my final comment. And thank you for the time. I know it was a lot.
Thanks, Teresa. We appreciate it. So is there anybody else out there who wants to speak on this?
President Rintz, I see no other hands raised.
Okay. All right, so we'll just do a quick reality check here and then I can go walk the dog. So we're okay with Jim bringing this back on February 1st. Does everybody feel pretty comfortable about that? I'm not seeing any thumbs down. Plan fundamentally is good. We heard some comments on some specific items. We should probably think about those a little bit, Jim. Certainly some of Teresa's comments are important. One thing I'm going to ask is that, Teresa, if you're still listening, that you please provide somebody over at Village Hall with your availability for this meeting, because I heard you say that you might not be able to make it. Well, it's important that you do make it, because it's only communication that's going to make this process work better and make sure that we address all the individual needs of the businesses over there. So please, let's make sure that everybody can attend this meeting. We're only talking about 8 or 9 businesses, right? Right, Jim? I think
Sorry,
that's
I'm mute.
yeah.
Yeah, it would be the businesses all within Moffett Mall, all along Chestnut. And we reach out to the surrounding area. So we try to blanket the area to give everybody an opportunity to come and share their thoughts. So
Okay,
I would
good.
anticipate some of the folks there on Elm Street as well.
Yeah, and because Teresa has a dog in this fight, I want to make sure that she is part of the conversation from the very beginning, if we can do that. So, anything else, guys?
All good.
Time to walk the dog.
Great.
All right, here. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second,
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
Yes.
trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Awesome. We stand adjourned at some time that I don't know.
8:16.
8:15.
Good night, everybody.
All right, have a
Thank you.
good one, guys.